and welcome to this special episode that I've made for you guys this week. It's a conversation between me and my pal Dan around 1 year of the Self Improvement Project. 20th of May 2020 was when I did the first episode, and what we wanted to do, we just wanted to reflect. Dan is a long term friend and knows me well, so we used this platform to bounce thoughts off of each other, and hopefully this reflective piece will give you some insight into how I found things, as well as taking it as inspiration for yourself. If you want to start a wee side project, if you're maybe thinking and in the middle of doing something that you want a bit more perspective on. So hopefully this gives you that, and I hope you enjoy it. I mean, my favorite, one of my favorite things has been Runtsy said, "Shut up, you know nothing" in one of the chats, and I made an episode out of it.
Oh, is that what that was from?
Yeah,
I thought that was just like a...
it provoked a thought within me, and I was like, I must make an episode. I think at the start of that one as well, I was like, this episode is dedicated to a particular friend that told me to shut up, I know nothing. Something like that. So
yeah, when I saw that, I was like, oh, it's just like a kind of podcast style, like quite like an enticing title to get people to listen. I didn't think it was like specifically aimed at Rancid, but that's good. I like that.
I might need to get him to suggest more names for.
Oh, there's plenty in the
even
chat.
if they're offensive, yeah. Even if they're directly offensive to myself, yeah.
You've got plenty in the chat to pick from, mate.
Yeah, that's very true. That's very true. Where should we start then? Should we? Because I was thinking we could even go back to, like, this might sound daft, but I think it's like quite interesting from a point of view of people who aspire to do things like what we chat about with our own projects. But I actually first got this feeling. I can pinpoint it was like just after summer 2016. Like that's when I started getting. I don't want to say antsy, but you get kind of itchy feet of what else? Like what else is there?
Yeah, I think I definitely kind of, because recently I've been thinking back as well as to when my mindset kind of changed.
Yeah,
and
that's a good way.
I think it probably was around that time as well. It was definitely, I think probably a lot of people are enticed by this, but when I read 4 Hour Work Week,
yeah.
then I was like, shit, it kind of feels like there's another way possible.
Yeah, the possibilities that you don't, or I guess you're not aware that exist, but they do. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I think it was that was definitely the first thing that kind of piqued my interest and kind of made me think that, yeah, there might be another way possible. Obviously 4 Hour Work Week is it's an exaggeration of a different way of working, and that's the highest end of the exaggeration. But just the concepts that they discussed, I think, yeah, pretty similar to you in terms of, yeah, that's when I kind of felt something else.
I am so you might be different, but the lad Nick that I chatted to from the States on this, it was quite good because we got into chatting about this stuff as well, and it's almost like you have a moment that digs or creates that search. So for me, there's 2 things I remember from that time. Was in 2016 I got the job that I aspired to get in my, not peak, but it's that thing that you have gone to uni for, you've taken a job to get to that job for, and that's what you want your identity to be. So I got the job as a lecturer in sport at the college, and I was like, that's me. That's not the best I can do, but that's what my aspirational goal was. And I've read other pieces about it, but it's almost like you your goal so quickly that creates that feeling of like disillusionment, or
Yeah,
by succeeding really early, you then get that feeling of, I don't want to say the term what's next, but you get that feeling of like, is this it? And
yeah,
how, again, like how shit it actually is.
yeah. Well,
You know?
I can like from a kind of like theoretical standpoint, I can definitely resonate with that. I don't feel like I've reached that myself, but I think that is kind of that's a risk, isn't it? Like if you aspire to something and you're always working towards something and you have been, like for example, if you're doing it in college or university, if you're working towards it for like let's say like 3-4 years, and constantly when you're working towards it, if you're not happy during that time, there's probably a part of you that's thinking, right, like fair enough, I'm not happy now, but I'm working towards my goal, and when I get to
Yeah,
that goal, I'll be happy.
yeah.
And
I'll
when
put
you
up
do,
with it for yeah.
yeah, when you do get to that goal, I mean, for a lot of people, that might be it. Like people might get there and they might think, oh, fantastic, like this is where I want to be. But I think for a lot of other people, they might kind of think, okay, this is what I've been working towards, but I'm
Yeah,
still not happy. Like I need to do something else, and it
yeah.
probably feels like that's kind of that's feeling that you got.
Mm. The, I thought about this recently, again, just reflecting upon it, and I think it's that thing of, it's a battle of two things that you come up against when you reach this point, and it's a battle of, am I happy and fulfilled, against the security that it gives you. Like that job when I got it, gave me security for life if I wanted it.
Yeah,
But I needed to either be happy with that or be happy with the fact that I would probably be overly stressed for something that I didn't truly care about for the rest of my career. Like that was the constant question of, what do you want more?
yeah.
So
And how, like, at what kind of stage, like, obviously when you felt like that, what,
mm.
what do you think it was that made you think, right, I need to do something else? Like, at what point did you move on with that?
So that's where, I guess, the second thing, where you get your first, no, you don't get your first job. You get your job of your dreams that you've been working so hard to get to. And then you get that awareness, a little bit like what you did with the 4-hour work week. And when I'd done my research, after being like, "Oh, I actually don't like this, it's too stressful, I don't want to live the rest of my life like this," I found the book Free Range Humans, which I still read
Mm.
about today.
Diane
I go back
Campbell.
to it, yeah, revisit it.
Yeah,
I know you've read it and dug into it, and it's maybe it's the style suits me, but like it just resonates, and you can drop in and out of it, and it was so like accepting that there is another way that you can explore and just continue to develop. So that's definitely like, again, 2016, I go back to, that was the thing that, you talk about maybe waking up a bit, like, oh, that's the thing that made me wake up and realize, right, I need to try and explore my own thing,
yeah,
as well. But I think it was just like the stress of that job as well was horrific, and you feel like you have to accept that that's what it's going to be because of the title of it. You're like, oh, I can tell everybody I'm this, but your day to day is grim.
yeah.
Like it's unenjoyable, and yeah.
And what was like how, I guess, like how many, obviously reading like Free Range Humans, like finding out that there is like similar to 4-hour work week, and I have the same kind of feeling with How to Live a Good Life by Jonathan Jonathan Fielder. Like that's a book. Like
his
I'll
podcast
refer
is
back
good as
to.
well. Yeah, I've listened to a few of those. Yeah.
Like after kind of finding out that there is a different way, and feeling like that, like in the position that you were in, like how many iterations of a different path did you go through, like until you got to right, I want to do a podcast?
Yeah, that's a great point because there's so many.
I know a few. Like I know we've had like hour-long conversations about like a few of the things that you've gone through, but I'm wondering if there's like any others that you kind of thought like you might have started with, like had thoughts to start with, and maybe just didn't see it through for whatever reason before you settled on the podcast.
Yeah, I think there's lots of different things we can talk about with that, and I think there's the role of using media, which gives you flexibility. I think there's the aspect of the experience of trying something, reflecting upon it, seeing if it works for you, how you feel about it. There's the different environments of things. There's a different stage of life that we can talk about, because I would say the first thing I tried was, because I was doing sports coaching a lot, I tried to do a coaching thing. So I think the main thing I used was Facebook. I created a group. I would post coaching things. And a funny reflection as well is that when you dig into doing your own thing, doing your own project, creating your own business, whatever you want to call it, the themes that exist at the start will exist for a long time. Like the stuff I was writing about back in 2016 to do with sports coaching, a lot of those themes and concepts exist in podcast episodes I recorded last week. It's all around self-development, self-improvement, self-leadership sort of stuff. But I was talking about that then, but you don't, like, it's tough to explain in a pinpoint kind of way, but the stuff that you like gravitate towards, you need to trust that and just go with it. There's no linear path and journey to get to a certain point.
Yeah.
Whatever you're gravitating towards, you just need to like give into it. Because it happened with that, and then it turned into a leadership page called 20s Leadership, because I was in my 20s and I was interested in leadership, but then I also found that these projects gave me experience and learnt about things I didn't want to pursue. I ended up leaving sports coaching because I could not deal with the egos and or the ego element of it that existed. Everybody was just doing it to get up the ladder to become a famous coach, and that's not what I was doing it for. And I couldn't be in that environment anymore. And then leadership turns into corporate leadership, climbing the corporate ladder. What do leaders look at like at the top? And again, it turns into that ego side of things where I don't want to spend my time developing people's egos to get up the corporate ladder. A lot of buzzwords, a lot of management talk that I hate. So that kind of disbanded. And then I wanted more experience in business, so I got a job in recruitment. And then I tried stuff with Utility Warehouse, where I'm having to have my own business and recruit people to come into the business. And again, looking back and reflecting, I don't agree with that, because it puts a lot of pressure on yourself. I think it's right for some people, but it just fed the ego too much. I cannot sell to people to inflate my own ego, which then led to this project that I do is completely selfless. It's my own thing, but I have no, and you know this, I don't have any goals that I'm aiming towards. Everything is going to be, my metric of success is serendipity. If something good happens because of it, because of me doing a podcast or an email or a tweet, that's the beautiful thing.
Yeah.
Everything else is as a result of. And it's nice because you don't feel like there's any pressure on it to continue. And I think it's just important to, like, I ask myself this quite a lot. Do I enjoy it? Do I love what I'm doing? And if anything makes me feel like no, I have to change it. I have to stop it.
Yeah.
But that's like 5 years now of trial and error, testing, experimenting to see what I actually even enjoy. As we mentioned before, yeah, go on.
I was just going to say that's like, I know you've been through like many iterations of different paths and they've not worked out for whatever reason, but I think a lot of people place so much importance on what they do want and they work towards what they do want, but I think equally it's as important to, if not more in certain circumstances as well, to know exactly what you don't want. Like that is equally as valuable. And it sounds like those iterations that you've worked through, regardless if they've worked out or not, have all fed into this kind of stage that you're at now. So you've seen things you don't want to do, you've learnt from it, and you've thought, right, this is where I'm at, and here you are. So
yeah. I mean, you talk about tunnel vision and me just chatting away, but you've just completely taken another perspective, which I completely agree. Like, that's probably what it is. I have figured out what I don't want, and I've manipulated everything to do with the self-improvement project to be like what I don't want and what I've learned that I don't want, because it's a trap. Imagine you stick with something because of your ego. I can't let people know that this hasn't worked for me. I can't walk away from it. It becomes like a box that you can't get out of.
yeah, massively.
Because once you get too far into it, there's no way out. And I think if we go back to the initial catalyst, I guess, with the job and trying to find something new, it was definitely, you're trying to find an escape, but it's also about not living with any regrets. And I mean, I can't talk on behalf of people, but I can imagine the amount of people that live with a regret of having not tried something because of the risk or the reputational damage it might come with if you walk away from something that is perceived as being so good. Because
that's
the
like,
risk, yeah.
That's like, obviously we're kind of at the age that I don't necessarily know if, like, I don't think we would have really fully experienced that yet, but from a kind of, I guess from just like a personal standpoint, like that is a big fear, and I think that's a big fear for a lot of people, is if they, let's say they got to like the end of their working life, and then they kind of thought, shit, I wish I had tried that. Like, why did I not just like take the risk and try it? Yeah,
that's one of my biggest
scary,
drivers. Yeah, definitely one of my biggest. That's why we moved to Edinburgh. I needed, like, if we'd stayed in Aberdeen and I'd stayed in that job, like, that would have been it.
Yeah.
You're in the environment that you're comfortable in. You'll bounce around forever, not truly finding or knowing what could have been. And that's such a driver of living with any regret. Yes, you have ups and downs, but you have ups and downs with everything. The level of risk that people are willing to take to, you put your faith and hope, and yeah, I think, for me, that's definitely been a driver of trying new things, and if you don't feel it, but it's maybe, I wouldn't want to say working, because if it's working, then you get a good feeling off of it. But if you try something and it doesn't completely sit well within your instinct and your intuition, then like develop it, pivot. Like that's such a big element of what I do, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you can definitely see that from like what you've done and what you've tried. Like, you know, you said you've been working, or you had worked in recruitment before, didn't like it. Take that risk and move out.
Mm-hmm.
And you've done it. And now you're in a career that, as far as I'm aware, like
very fulfilling.
You're filled with. And you're doing this, so that's great. It's just like, it's kind of theory in action, isn't it? Is probably the best way of putting it. Like, you're putting theory into physical actions and living that, which is great.
Yeah, but the thing is as well, and it's completely subjective. This is success to me. Some people might look at what I do and they're like, that is not success, and that's fine. But what people need to do is they need to understand what success is for them. They need to take the time to think about, right, what do I really want? What does that look like? If that means, you know, success for some people is promotions, it is job titles, I get that. It is having a certain amount of money, which is absolutely fine.
Oh, yeah.
But there's a kind of societal expectation that is what everybody wants, and that isn't what everybody wants. You know, we've chatted a lot about the emergence of people valuing time over money, and that is how some people should live, and it's great that some people are finding that, but that's also not going to be what everybody wants. So
it's spot on. It's finding what you value, what you view as success, and like I said, it's very subjective. Like promotions, more money, for some people that is spot on. Like, people aspire to that, and that's absolutely perfect. But for other people as well, like, people might want a different path, and I think recognizing that at like a fairly early age is quite a big thing as well. I'm speaking from very general perspective here, but I imagine there's probably a lot of people, perhaps a bit later on in life, who would only realize it at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that's quite a kind of scary thought.
Mm-hmm. I think when you talk about like commitments people have in life, that is a scary thought.
Yeah.
And like, everybody can change, start over, do whatever they want, but that's just as much risk as, like, we talk about the Edinburgh example. Like, you always have a bit of freedom. It's always going to be a bit risky, though. But yeah, the more invested you are into a job or a mortgage, or you've got kids, whatever it is, it's always going to be scary, for sure.
Need to embrace it.
Aye.
To embrace it, man. So you've been through these different paths. You got to what you felt was your dream career, didn't work out. You've taken numerous different paths, ended up at a podcast, which you've been doing for like over
just over a year.
So how do you feel that has gone so far? Like, overall, like, what's your impression of it?
Yeah, I think the most important thing to start with is that, like, this is the first time, so this is 5 years since starting anything. This is the first time I've ever felt completely at ease and at comfort with the content I put out there, how I do it, having no shame around how it's perceived, what the metrics are. I just enjoy it. I have no expectations for it. the best moments I have had have been when people say, this episode really helped me today, or this part of this email was exactly what I needed, or I've been looking for, or whatever. And it's very difficult now to not surround yourself with the online hype around growth from a social proof point of view. So I would say that if anybody does start their own thing, to not get hung up on that. The most important thing is that you find something that you enjoy doing, and just finding your own thing, because you don't need permission. We chatted earlier, I do monologue type podcasts. They are not the most popular. They are not the best way to grow a podcast, but they're what I enjoy. They're how I find flow. They're how I develop my public speaking and communication skills. They're how I clarify ideas. That's exactly why I tweet. That's exactly why I do the email. And I think everybody needs to find that. They need to find that thing that they enjoy, because the momentum comes. If you'd said to me back a year ago, Lawrence, you're going to start a podcast, and then a few months later you're going to tweet every day, and then a few months later you're going to actually turn them into videos and put them on YouTube each week, and then a couple months later you're going to start an email, I would have been like, no way. But then I think it would have been very easy from a Business 101 online startup review would have been for an individual doing their own project, would have been, you have to do this, you have to do this, you have to do this. So all those things that I do now, you would have had to do at the time, and it's overwhelming. You need to do it as momentum builds. And then I think that takes us quite nicely onto like a huge point that has helped my knowledge and awareness, but you've also used it as well, and we've both benefited from it. It's just that consistency, the game changer for the self-improvement project. Out of any other project I've done, yes, you can, like I say, you can look at any kind of entrepreneur, startup, business content you want, and they'll tell you all the things you need to do, but the one thing that is the most important is consistency, because if you've not got consistency over a long period of time, you're not going to produce the right stuff, but also you're not going to enjoy it.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, that was going to be one of the things I was quite kind of interested to hear about, was like what habits or like processes have you put in place that you feel has made you stick with it for so long? I know you mentioned like the authenticity piece, like it has to be authentic, you have to enjoy it. Mm-hmm. Online there's like multiple guides on follow this process if you want to do this, which is great, but ultimately if you're not authentic about it, that's not going to come across to people. And
you can't be consistent with it anyway. If it's not authentic, you'll never keep it up. Yeah,
exactly. So I think authenticity is obviously a huge part, but what other kind of habits do you think you put in place to keep you going? And like, is there any particular kind of books that you've taken like big inspiration from, like that you've learnt from, that you can kind of attribute to your success and keeping it going?
Yeah, I think we obviously know about James Clear and Atomic Habits, and that just gives you the detail as well as the peace of mind of that you're doing the right thing. I also think I started off with one habit, that I do one podcast a week on this particular day. You schedule out that time. I think a lot of people have fear of putting stuff out as well. I have no fear about putting out something new. Nobody could read it or listen to it. I don't care. It's not. Obviously, it is for them, and it will be if they come across it. But I view it as mastery. Like, I'm getting better by creating it, getting clearer on it.
Yeah.
Content wise, other books. I mean, there's nothing that comes to mind straight away. I do really like the Grit book by Angela Ducksworth. I think, again, it gives you that peace of mind of I'm on the right track. It'll come. Encouraging that patience. And, it can be, if you focus on the goal too much, it can be quite, like, it'll hinder you. It'll be a burden. So there's no content on it or books that I could specifically attribute to it, but I think you just need to accept that you're going to hit some goals and not hit others.
Yeah.
You can't put that expectation on yourself, and that goes against every goal setting motivational piece of content that has ever existed. But you talk about the habits that have been created, the systems that I've put in place, and then the stacking of those. It all comes down to that habit side of things that is so clear. So
it's massive, isn't it? Like, I know we've spoken at length about that book in the past, but it still baffles me, like, how, and this is not kind of disparaging the book, because I'd like, personally, it's one of my favorite books, but from a sense of really, like, how simple the content is. It's stuff that anyone can do at any point. And it doesn't require any kind of specific skills. It just requires dedication and an ultimate goal, right?
Yeah.
But I'm still fascinated by how simple the book is, but how much impact it can have. Like, it sounds like that book was, although a lot of the other books have kind of just given you peace of mind as to what you're doing is the right thing to do. Like, that book, I know, has played a part in your journey. And I know for myself as well, like, even just personally, like, that book has been so helpful. So yeah, great to hear that there's things you can kind of like attribute it back to, and again, it's theory in action. You've taken theory from one thing, you've taken it on board, you've worked on it, and you've built something from it, which is fantastic. So
yeah, I think the fascinating thing, the most fascinating thing for me about it, right, is you say it's so simple, and I completely agree. I feel like the effort that I put in it doesn't feel like that much, right?
yeah,
But the amount of people that don't do it, like you talk about that dedication, that turning up, the amount of people that don't do it is what makes it difficult. Like, that's why it's so special.
it's so easy to stop.
It's almost like a paradox, isn't it? Like,
Yeah.
how easy something is, but how difficult it can be to achieve. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to recall the quote. It's like, I know it's going to sound quite cheesy, but it's something to do with success doesn't come from like overnight wins. It comes from doing regular boring things
Yeah.
frequently. Like, I know, like, word for word that's not what the quote is, but I know that that's roughly what it refers to, and it's so true.
Yeah, it's almost that kind of picture of success is really sexy, and it's this big attractive thing that only really prestigious people get, but success is actually that really boring, unremarkable little thing that you repeatedly do. And I guess it's because you do it so much, you don't perceive it as success. You're just like, oh, that's just what it is. That's who I am. And
it's part of your life.
I regularly, and again, this is good for grounding, but I regularly tell myself, let's see how this is in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, because yes, it's a long time, but the accumulation of repeated tasks over that period of time, it's like learning. You sometimes don't know when you're good at something, or when you specifically learnt something. It's just an accumulation of doing something repeatedly that has led you to be that. And
Yeah.
what if in 5 years time people are like, oh, Lawrence, you're such a great podcaster, or you write such great emails and that. I'm like, I was doing this 5 years ago and no one was telling me this. Do you know what I mean? And
Yeah, exactly.
that's what you need to have when you do your own thing, or when you look at yourself and improve yourself, because no one, it's a sin, right? But no one tells you all the great things that you do and have done and are enough. And I like to think that the podcast and the tweets and all that make people think about that for themselves. Like, what one episode that sticks out for me that I really enjoyed doing was that you're not a human being, you're not a human doing, you're a human being. And that just, I really liked the title. I felt like it was quite witty, but I want people to listen to that and think, yeah, I am, here to live my life and enjoy just being present, and not getting sucked into everything, because we have been being programmed to do all the time, be here, do this, be a alpha male, or the most popular person in the world. And it's just like, you don't have to.
No.
Think for yourself, even though you maybe don't give yourself permission to. So.
It's all subjective, but I think there's so many external factors that, and understandably so, there's so many external factors that feed into people's perception of their own success, when really it comes down to, like, you need to be comfortable with yourself. Like, you define success for yourself. Like, no one's going to tell you what success is.
100%. Absolutely.
Like what you mentioned, that's kind of like I guess, like, the thing that you enjoy most about the podcast is people taking stuff from it and giving you feedback in terms of saying, look, I really needed this today. I learned something from this. Like, that's success to you, and that's what you've enjoyed. Is there any kind of part of it that you probably haven't enjoyed as much as you thought you would, or that you just didn't cross your mind when you started, that now you kind of think, yeah, that part annoys me? Or is it all fairly positive?
That's a good question. I don't think in the process is anything I don't enjoy, because I think I'm quite good at eliminating it. Like, I know that I don't want to do interviews every week because I don't like relying on other people.
Yeah.
I like just doing it when I feel in the flow and talking about something. That might change. I think, and maybe this is like an aspiration, but I would only do if I could do it consistent. I do think, could I do that every day? Could I create a podcast every day and put it out there? But on the flip side, I'm like, I don't want to end up resenting this.
Yeah.
It's a catch-22.
And like you said, to be fair, like you've said, you're good at cutting stuff out. If it doesn't work, like, you might try it, see how it goes. If it doesn't work, like, you're not scared to cut it out and just say, look, this isn't for me, we'll cut that part. So it all sounds like really positive from my experience of just chatting with you, like chatting with you throughout the process.
It would come with sacrifice, though. It would come with, like, I sacrifice growth, probably, and whatever you want to call it. You want to call it listens, you want to call it subscribers, you want to call it views, whatever you want to call it. I sacrifice that by not doing things I don't want to do.
Yeah.
Because I know I can't do them consistently. I know that it's probably toxic and unhealthy for me in the long term to get obsessed with that. and I'm quite happy and content with, like I touched on, with the serendipity of it. Whatever is a win from what I do is a win. And like, for example, last night Anna was out with one of her pals that she knows through work, and Anna was just chatting away, and she's just telling her about like how I do a podcast and an email, and it's all about positivity and self improvement and stuff. And she was like, "That sounds amazing. Like, I want to read or listen to this a little bit more." And then she signed up like last night after a night out with Anna, and I'm like, Anna was relaying to me the phrases and the words she was saying about how excited she was, and I was like, that's what is success to me. I don't need 100 subscribers that I've never met and never interacted with before. I don't need followers or listens or views from people that I don't know. Yeah. And they probably will watch one thing or listen to one thing I do. But that's not what I'm doing this for. I'm doing this to empower people to take responsibility for their own self-improvement and self-awareness. Like,
yeah, you say you don't need it though, but like, I know you keep me up to date with like listeners and like numbers and countries and stuff. And although you don't know these people, like, that's one thing I've always really enjoyed you sharing with me is like the countries of like countries of origin, like, of listeners, and you have
Saudi Arabia to Trinidad and Tobago.
Yeah, you have people in like Saudi listening, which is like amazing. You've got people from these like small towns in the US and stuff, and although you don't know them, I think that's probably testament to like what you're doing in terms of you're being authentic with it, and that's obviously resonating with people, and you don't know them, but they will still be taking what you're saying and using it to improve on whatever goals they might have, improve on their life, just want a little bit of positivity as well. And it's not as if it's like a one-off either. Like, if you'd sent me like a screenshot of someone listening from Ukraine one time, I'd be like, oh, that's like really interesting, but could well be a one-off. But you've sent me stuff before.
Yeah, it's quite consistent.
It's frequent, it's consistent. So you've obviously got people like all across the world, which is amazing. And that to me has been like, I don't know if I would class it as a surprise, because you're obviously putting a lot of work into it. But I've just found that fascinating, like the reach that it's had, and it's not, like I said, it's not a fluke. Like, you're getting consistent listens in like Australia, consistent listens in like Ukraine, Saudi, Caribbean, like US and stuff. Like, it's amazing how far it's gone. And I'm wondering if you kind of like, did you ever envisage that it would, I guess, have that kind of reach, or were you more hoping that it was just for people that you might know through like friends of friends, and you just want to help them out?
Yeah, I think first of all, that is this, seeing those consistent listens come through from those areas. I don't know them, you're right, but it gives me such a sense of fulfillment and purpose that I am maybe helping them with something in their life, and I don't even know them.
It's powerful.
And look, I would love for them to reach out. I would love to hear from them, because these are the people that are at the start of my journey as well with it. So I'm obviously going to buy into what is it that you enjoy about it, because these are the people that are bought in. But I'm not saying that I don't care about having people I don't know listen.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that's just from an ego point of view. I don't care about numbers where it's a social proof side of things.
Yeah.
I do care about helping an individual on a consistent basis with something that they maybe not struggling with, but it gives them a boost. That, like, seeing those people listen regularly or people reading something regularly, that's success to me. I'm buzzing with that.
Yeah.
Um,
It's quality over quantity, because I think a lot of people, when starting things like this, and it's probably a reflection of just like social media and an image that a lot of people want to portray, is people want to portray success, and to a lot of people success is, it's things like numbers, it's things like interaction, like whatever, retweets, likes, whatever it might be. But it just feels that because you have been authentic with it, that has just come naturally, and it's not something you focus on, so it's not distracted from the overall kind of cause and the overall intention of the podcast as well, which I think is something that's really great.
Yeah, because I think if you do start to get influenced by that, you change your style to fit a narrative that is something that becomes unhealthy. A lot of people will talk about Instagram likes, retweets, views, subscribers, whatever platform you're using. But the best moments for me have been seeing listens from particular places that turn up every week, or a message on Twitter where someone reaches out that I don't even know they exist, and they say, "Oh, I listened to this," or "I've been reading your tweets for months, and they really have helped me feel at ease about this," and things like that. And that's the things that you don't see through social proof numbers, you know? And I think that if you're ever doing something, that's the confirmation, that's the thing that makes you think, right, this is the thing for me, this is what I enjoy.
It's validation, isn't it?
That's the word. Yeah, totally.
It validates the whole kind of premise behind your purpose, which is unbelievable. What's like the biggest, when you've kind of either looked through the numbers of like the listenership or the location of listeners, like what's been the biggest surprise? Like what kind of country have you seen you're like, shit, I wouldn't have expected someone to be listening from there? Or in terms of numbers, like has there been a certain particular month that you've been really surprised by? Like, is there anything that you can kind of attribute that to?
Yeah, I don't think anything really takes me by surprise. It's more just kind of pleasant, you know?
Yeah.
You see a random country come up that's listened like over 50 times to your podcast, and you're like, what is it about me that this person or these people, that maybe a group, you know, what interests them about me and what I do? Is it because I'm different? Is it because I'm a different voice that is giving them? And it's kind of full circle around like 4-Hour Workweek or Free Range Humans, where they're maybe in a moment where they need to hear something, and that's their kind of validation of it. So do you know what I mean? And that's just nice. I wouldn't say it's a surprise. I think the best kind of surprises or things that, you know, we talk about, maybe like validation and things like that, are definitely when people reach out. That's always very good. But to go back to the theme around consistency, look, I don't make groundbreaking numbers in the grand scheme of the podcasting world or whatever you want to look at, but I have seen that growth of, you maybe have a bit of a jump when you start something because it's new and it's novel to people. It plateaus out for a bit, but it slowly increases. And March this year, 2021, was the highest listened to month after 10 months of doing a podcast every week.
Yeah.
And it might not sound like a long period of time, but when you turn up and do something once a week for 10 months, it feels like a long time. It won't in years to come, but that feels like a long period of time. So that is definitely a satisfying thing where you don't get big jumps because it's inconsistent, but you get gradual, and you're like, this is growing. This is, and it's slow. It's a
Yeah.
slow burner, but it's growth, and you're like, and I think it's because I don't feel like I do anything for growth. I just do something each week. We talk about that unremarkable, turning up each week, doing this, not the same thing, but you're providing each week,
You're turning
and it
up.
just
Yeah.
slowly, steadily growing. And that's where I'm like, I think that's the most kind of fulfilling thing, where you're like, oh,
It's that
this
snowball
is
effect.
my favorite thing. One of my favorite things is when I screenshot. I'm like, look, we're growing, and like I say, I know it's not groundbreaking in the grand scheme of everything in the world, but for me, that's growth, and I know that you and the other lads and that love that moment of, oh look, we're going up a wee bit. It's great. That's good.
Well, it's like you said, like kind of growth isn't linear, is it? I think a lot of people expect, like when they start something, like especially let's use like an example of going to the gym. I think when people think they're starting at zero, growth is going to be a linear path to success. Whereas you might have weeks that, especially when you first start off, because your body might not be used to it, you might have weeks where you see big improvements. And then maybe like in the next kind of few months, you will plateau and you might feel as if nothing's happening.
Yeah.
But if you keep turning up if you were to kind of plot it on a chart, your success is going up, but it will never be linear. Success is never linear.
Yeah.
And it sounds like that is probably the same thing that's happened here. Like you said, you started off and you had a big jump when you started because it's something new. It plateaus for a wee bit, but slowly, because you are turning up, you're being consistent, you're putting the work in, it is growing.
And look, there might be a time in the future, say like years down the line, where it maybe gets a wee bit more popular, or for whatever reason, but I won't be doing anything different. And there we have it. So I hope you have enjoyed the conversation that Dan and I had around the self-improvement project, and hopefully it provides some inspiration for you going forward with any project that you are doing, and give you some insight into how I operate, what I want the self-improvement project to be, what I want it to become, and the amount of people that I hope it helps. So thanks for listening, and I would love for you to share any moments or points that you found particularly useful during that as well. And I will see you guys all next time. Cheers!